Welcome back, dudes and dudettes. This is episode 110 of The Anxious Truth. Today we are going to do something we haven't done in a while, and we're going to do an anxiety success story. We're going to hear from my friend Nick Maynard, all the way from the West Coast. Nick was nice enough to give me some of his time today to tell his story. It's a good story. Stay tuned to hear it. You're going to hear Nick go from literally laying on the floor, having a panic attack on the floor at a Costco on Black Friday and not being able to leave his home and his bedroom for over 2.5 weeks at one point, couldn't even go to the kitchen and get a glass of water, to back on his feet, driving up and down the California coast, taking trips, meeting friends, visiting family, taking care of his own family, like kicking ass at his job and his career, and back to being like a normal guy. It's a good story. And Nick was kind enough to take the time to share it with us today, aside from the time that Nick volunteers in my Facebook group as one of my admins and moderators. So stay tuned. You're going to want to hear it. It's a good inspirational story, and Nick is just a good human being. Before we go into that, today is June 10th, 2020. And those of you who have been following along will know that June 10th is book release date. So today, my second book, which is the Giant Recovery Guide, was released on Amazon, Apple, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Smashwords, all over the place. Get it in print, get it in an ebook copy, the whole 9 yards. It came out today officially. It is 70,000 words. It's 450 pages. I dare you to find a more comprehensive guide to understanding and solving this anxiety problem that we talk about. I don't think you're going to find one. I'm not ashamed to say that I am proud of this one. It took 10 years of my life to develop this thing, and the last year of writing, editing, and producing to get this book out there. And today is the day it's out there. I'm super happy. I'm super excited. A bunch of people are already downloading it on their Kindles. It starts arriving at people's doorsteps in print tomorrow, from what I understand. The initial reviews are really good. I'm super happy that people are finding it helpful. Please take a moment. If you have been following the podcast and it is helping, and you like this content and you feel like it is helping you move along, this book is everything you've ever heard me say on social media, on the podcasts, on Facebook, wherever it is, except in much greater detail and organized logically and sequentially like a course or a class would be. So you can go through step by step by step, learn how you got here, learn what the nature of the problem is, learn what the nature of the solution is, make a recovery plan, execute that recovery plan. I really believe that it's an incredibly helpful tool, and you're not going to find one as detailed as this. So do me a favor, go check it out on my website. Go to theanxioustruth.com/recovery guide, all one word. Or if you just go to theanxioustruth.com, you'll see it right there on the homepage. Check it out. There's a sample chapter that you can read. You can listen to a sample chapter. You can read about the book. You can pop on over to Amazon and see the description there. Check it out. I think if you're finding that the podcast is helpful, it may be a much more useful tool to have everything organized in one place where you can go through it as if you were taking a course. So that's enough advertising for the day. I'm just psyched about this, and I had to tell somebody. So you guys are the lucky ones to hear it in this episode. Let's get cooking. My buddy Nick, his success story is a good one. Thanks for coming by, and see you guys later. All right, folks, we have the one and only Nick Maynard with me today, all the way from the West Coast. What up, dude?
What's going on?
Oh, I'm super glad that we're getting to do this finally. We have Nick should have been one of the success story videos like months ago, and we just haven't had a chance to do it. So, and you've been very patient, like just patiently waiting for an invite, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I was wondering when I would get it.
Yeah. Now, we talked about it. It was just like finally, I think, what day did I even talk to you this week? I don't know. It might have been Monday or Sunday. I think it would have been Sunday. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Sunday.
Let's do that now. Because I don't plan shit, like, which is so bad, but I just make it up as I go along. We're going to do good, though. So yeah. For those of you that don't know Nick, if you're watching and you're in the Facebook group, you know Nick because he's one of our dedicated admins and moderators. And Nick, thank you for the time that you spend on that. It is
sure.
I cannot thank you guys enough for doing what you do, and I appreciate you in a big way. And Nick is in the Facebook group because he started as just somebody who came to the Facebook group, started looking for help, right? And now, like, a whole new dude. Like, we could barely recognize you.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I was on my way to recovery, but finding the group kind of kick-started. It made me move faster towards recovery.
Yeah.
So I was kind of on my way, but I was dragging my feet a little bit. You know, humans don't like change. And, I was so used to living that way that I was just moving really, really slow. And I was preventing myself from getting to where I needed to be to enjoy life again.
Yeah. So what happened? Like, what was the deal? So since it's a success story, unfortunately, we got to hear the part that sucked so that we know the part that was a success. So what's the
Right.
deal? How did you wind up where you were?
Well, my first panic attack was when I was 19 years old. And I was hanging out with a friend of mine, smoking some weed, and I had a panic attack. And I had smoked plenty of weed before, and all of a sudden I had a panic attack. Lost I was drawing up, my hands, my
Yeah,
tongue
yeah.
wasn't working. Take me to the hospital. Went to the hospital, calmed down. Wasn't even seen. Went into the ER, came out. So that was my first one. Not to draw out 20 years, but I probably had another 5 to 6 panic attacks, but in 20 years, it never really developed into a disorder.
Hmm.
But there were times where I remember there was a time where I had an allergic reaction, and I ended up having to go to the ER for that. And about 2 weeks after that, I didn't leave the house because I didn't realize what it was, but that was the
Yeah.
kind of beginning of agoraphobia. And
Yep.
but I ended up getting back to work, and everything was fine. And I'd feel anxiety from time to time. I knew I had anxiety. I knew I could, but I just lived a pretty normal life. In September of 2018, I passed out at a brewery, and no, I wasn't drunk. I had one beer, and I had eaten a little calzone,
Right.
and I just started feeling lightheaded. Went to the bathroom, and I was like, "Oh, I might pass out." I did pass out. I hit my head when I fell, and went to the ER. It wasn't from anxiety, but it was they called it vasovagal
Yeah. Vasovagal response. Yeah.
vasovagal, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I got checked out. Everything was fine. But that now my subconscious, now I'm scared. So I at that point, I stopped going to the gym. It's like,
Yeah.
well, if I go to the gym, I'm going to pass out again. So all of a sudden, I just stopped doing certain things that I was doing.
Yeah.
And then in October, we got broken into while we were home. He didn't get into the house, but it was in the garage. It was attached to the house. And I ended up finding the guy. It was about almost 2 days later, and he got arrested, and I was there for the whole thing. And so that was, heightened
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
nerves and
Yo.
stress and all that. And then in November of 2018, that actually Thanksgiving, we found out that my grandmother had stage 4 cancer, and she was going to pass away because she was 87 years old, and said, "I'm not going to do any type of treatments or anything. I've lived a long life." She was like my rock. She was like a second mother to me. I lived with her, in my teenage years, which were a little troubled because my parents got divorced and all that stuff. So that affected me. The next day, we went to Costco on Black Friday, and I had to go take some chairs back because we had Thanksgiving at my house. So we rented some chairs, took them back to the place, and then we headed to Costco, my wife and I, and we had to get gas. I started to feel anxious right when we were pulling off of the exit.
Mhm.
So I went, got the filled up gas, and I told my wife, I said, "Man, I'm feeling anxious." And she's heard me say that before, and she's like, "Well, why?" And I was like, I have no idea. And so I tried to push through it, went into Costco, and obviously I'm not breathing. I probably holding my breath,
Yeah.
hyperventilate, whatever. I don't know what I was doing wrong. I started feeling like I was going to pass out again. So I
Yeah.
laid right in the middle of Costco on Black Friday on the floor for like 10
Nice.
minutes with people walking by me. "You need us to call somebody?" No, it's just a panic attack.
It's all good.
Yeah. So
Where is the video when we need it?
right. Yeah. I should have told my wife to record.
So good. Anyway, so what happens?
So I left. When I was finally able to get up, she said, "Well, do you want to shop?" I said, "No, I want to go home." So I ran to my safe space and went back home and laid in bed. And I had a work trip coming up on the 12th or 9th of December. And I started thinking about that immediately. Like, oh no, what's going to happen? I'm going to have anxiety. I'm going to do this. Well, I ended up going on the trip, and I was fine the first day. The next day I woke up. I went to the office. was there 8 hours, went back to my hotel, had some anxiety, woke up the next morning, and I was all of a sudden an agoraphobic. I couldn't leave my hotel room.
Yeah.
And so I stayed in my hotel room the whole day. My dad asked me to come up for dinner. I said no. They came down, brought me dinner, hung out with me in my hotel room. The next day, went out with my dad like nothing, had anxiety, had a few beers, started feeling normal.
Okay.
Like, oh, I'm fine, because I mean, obviously the alcohol has the same effect that like a benzo would,
Right. It's a sedative.
Right. So I woke up that evening, and the next day I had to fly back, and I mean, just riddled with anxiety, panic, and I had to be on a flight in like 4 hours. Couldn't go back to sleep. Had to go to the airport. I mean, I was literally like shaking, And anyway, got on the plane, got in my car, drove back home. Once I started almost to get home, I started feeling better again. I was like, what the hell's going on here? So fast forward to January 4th, my wife's birthday, 2019, I woke up with a panic attack. And that was it. That was it. As soon as I woke up with that panic attack, I'm like, I'm not even safe. Sleep doesn't even calm me down anymore. And that's when it turned in. It started spiraling into agoraphobia. And I would only leave when I had to, which was either there was a work function that I did, that I afterwards I had a panic attack, and but I stood up and talked in front of people with this disorder. And I'd been at home for 3 weeks, and they had no idea, But inside I was screaming, So it was just that was a really tough time. I was in the house. I mean, like I said, I left a few times when I had to, and I ended up having multiple panic attacks a day, anxiety, mostly staying in bed. There was about a 2.5 week period I didn't even leave my room. I felt like I couldn't go to the fridge and fill up my bottle of water. I couldn't even hold my bottle of water. I'd have to have my wife get it for me. I lost 30 pounds in like a month. Eating like soup. I didn't have an appetite. I couldn't even watch anything other than like repeats of Friends, if that makes any sense.
No, it actually does. Like that was okay. You could do that.
Yeah, but I couldn't watch anything new, because anything new would, make me think, or make, like anything like a thriller or something that, got my mind thinking. I would immediately start thinking about panic and anxiety, and it was just horrible. So, for months and months, then I found The Anxious Truth, and I started therapy. I'd talked to a psychologist. He did not specialize in CBT, so he wasn't the best, but I had found an online therapist while I was waiting to see a psychologist. And I started talking with her, and just kind of getting things off my chest helped a little bit. And she had a little knowledge in CBT. And so she helped me with that. Started reading, again, Claire Weeks. I had read Claire Weeks like years before, when I had that real bad, when I was just like you, when I
just like me, right? Similar stories. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just forgot all about it. So I started reading it again, read a couple of other books that weren't great, but went back to the Claire Weeks, and then found your podcast, and I found the group, and that was it. I just started feeling better. But it wasn't just, I'm listening to Drew's voice in his podcast, and all of a sudden I feel better. No, I had to do the work, just like you say, day in, day out, every day, made a plan, kept a diary, what I did today, exposures, and I just I couldn't even drive to the corner down here. I mean, not even a quarter mile, I'd start having a panic attack.
Yeah.
And so I started picking up the kids from school. I started doing little errands. Waiting in line was extremely hard for me. So I started small at like convenience stores, and then got bigger and bigger. And then my biggest exposure, some people saw me, was when I drove to LA to meet with Jay, and that was a huge exposure for me. I remember, I kind of asking for support from the admin group before I left, because I was having major anticipatory anxiety about going, and so it delayed me for probably about an hour, but I pushed through and did it. And when I did it, it really wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and I had learned so much at that point that I knew, how not to react,
Yeah.
and spiral out of control and make it worse. It's, and that really helped me on that trip.
That was a really long ride. That was a good 4.5, 5 hour ride, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I drove to San Diego, which was
Right. See your
another
dad
two and a
after that,
half.
right? Yeah.
And then when I left San Diego, I drove straight home. I didn't stop. That was six
Yeah.
and a half hours.
And I remember
Yeah.
you posted when you got back home about how you just drove straight through and like had the music on. And I think that's that thing where like and I know that you worked hard, man. Like you were doing the shit every day. There's no doubt about that. But until you have to do that last big thing that seems so like, oh my God, remember when I couldn't get out of bed? Like it's a
Right.
little bit like, oh, am I going to be able to do this? But then, you did such a great
Right.
job with that. It was great. It was great to see.
Yeah. It ended up being, I was really happy and thankful that I made the trip. There was times where I didn't want to make the trip, and obviously there was a lot going on in the world at the time, not as bad as it got, but I was, obviously had concerns about that going into a tourist area.
Right.
And Jay wanted to show me everywhere. He lives in LA. But you go to LA, Jay is the man to see.
Yeah.
He'll take you everywhere. He knows all the history. He's been there forever. And it just made it a really great trip. I'd never seen LA in that way, like hanging out with the local like that. It was, so it turned out to be a really good trip. And both of us still had anxiety, and we talked about it, and we continued on with our day. We didn't say, oh, take me back to the hotel and you go home. And, we just kept doing what we were going to do.
Some of the coolest pictures I've ever gotten via text were the pictures you guys sent me when you're hanging out in LA. That was like the greatest thing. Just for those of you who are watching or listening who don't know, Jay is also one of the admins of the Facebook group. So, we've all become friends, and it was great to see you guys doing that together. Let's talk a little bit about, like, you did the hard work. So you knew the nuts and bolts. You went through it. You did it. What was did you have a thing that was finally the breaking point where you were like, no more of this. I got it. I have to change something now. Was there a moment? Some people have a moment. Some people don't. Some people just sort of slowly turn around and start to move into recovery. Did you have a moment?
There was a few. It probably lasted weeks, actually, because when I was in my room. But I have a family. I have a wife and 3 children, and she was doing everything. My wife was my safe person. She was doing all the chores, taking care of the kids, and that, to me, I wasn't contributing to the family.
Yeah.
And so it made me feel absolutely horrible. So there was probably, some depression there was, as well, but it was, that came after, of course, the anxiety, what it turned me into. And I'm like, I just can't live like this. I mean, I'm worthless to my family, is what I was thinking. And, that was pretty much my rock bottom. When I thought about all of that, I said, I gotta get out of this somehow. I gotta figure this out. I had every single test done. I thought there was something wrong. Something wrong with my head, my heart, my lungs, something, blood test. I was going to when I remember one time my wife took me to the ER because I was having another panic attack, and it was a bad one. And she's driving me to the ER, and I remember thinking, I didn't tell her, but I was thinking in my head, man, I really hope something is wrong with me. Isn't that crazy?
No, and a lot of people think that. Like, if there's something physically wrong, I can either die and get it over with, or like they can fix me.
Right.
It's hard when it's a mystery and you don't know what it is.
Right. And I wanted an answer as to what, but there wasn't one, because it was anxiety, which is not harmful. It just sucks.
It does suck. But I mean, so I kind of get that thing that says, like, and it's so funny knowing you now, like, the way I know you and as a friend, that like the thought of you being useless to your family, I know how important that is to you. Like, your family is super important to you, and you're very vocal about that. And I love that. It's crazy how that disorder can take all of that away temporarily, but and put you in a space where you're just not even barely the same person, but you were always in there. You just had to find him again, and you did. So, yeah. And the thing that blows me away too is, I guess it was around January. I don't know when it was, but in the midst of all that, going from like, I'm stuck in my bedroom for 2 weeks to like, I'm driving to LA and hanging out with my friend, like, you you were actually given an award for the company you work at, and you produced so much last year. So in the midst of recovering from this raging anxiety disorder, you're like kicking ass at your job. It says a lot about the type of person you are, I think. So do you think you were better equipped because of your personality, or maybe, some of us are just built a little bit more to go into that difficult space than others are? Do you think you were one of those people?
Yeah, I do. Definitely, because I knew that I wouldn't do, the chores or go get my water or anything, but I would still have a laptop and my phone. And luckily that's what my job is. I work from home.
Yeah.
So I was still able, but I remember talking to these clients in Florida, and they had just moved there from California. They were in a hotel, and her husband had health problems, serious, was going to go into surgery, and they wanted to buy a house, and I couldn't help them. They bad credit, no income, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I remember talking, and I felt so bad, but I was in the midst, this is like February.
Right.
So I was in the midst of my worst anxiety ever. And I remember just like my whole body was just numb, buzzing. I felt like I was just going to fall over. And I stuck on the phone with her for an hour, just because I felt really bad. And I told her, this is how you can do it, this and that. So even when I felt at my worst, I was still able to work. And then when I started working and on my recovery, obviously it didn't happen overnight, but I dove further and further. That was part of my recovery. Hey, make this call, do this thing. So not just in my personal life, but my work life too.
Yeah.
I would go to the office. I would do, things that I didn't feel like doing because of anxiety. And it ended up, being my best year ever. And I had no idea until I got my award, because I wasn't looking at the numbers or anything. All of a sudden I got this award, and I'm like, what?
How the hell did that happen? That's so cool.
Right.
Sometimes you have that one thing to hang on to, like, well, I can hang on to my work and I can keep doing that, which is, sometimes helps, gives you a place to anchor onto a little bit while you're doing the work. But
right.
What was the biggest, where are we, 22 minutes? What was the biggest, did you have a biggest obstacle, a thing that was the stickiest to get past, the hardest to get past? Can you think of one?
Yeah, it was Costco.
Really? Well, back to the scene of the crime, laying there on Black Friday. Sure. That's that thing where we do not want to repeat negative experiences. Of course, nobody does. Yeah.
Costco and then driving. The driving, it was Costco and driving. Those were the two things that were the biggest obstacles for me.
Yeah. Yeah. We have very similar stories. I think you and I, we had some of the same challenges, and the timeline, and I read Claire Weeks and then freaking just forgot it. Like, right. What's wrong with us? But I think it's great. But so now let's look back. You did the work, you came through it. You had a bad year, but it ended up really great. And what did you learn? Are you better off now? Are you one of those people that would say, like, that really sucked, but I can be thankful because I learned X, Y, Z?
Yeah, I'm better now than I have been since I was 19. Like I said, I still dealt with anxiety. I still dealt with certain, thinking back to different things that happened throughout the last 22 years.
Yeah.
There were certain instances where I would retreat, and I just didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what it was. I just knew I didn't feel right.
Right.
Now I know what it is. So having that knowledge and knowing, how to react or not react, floppy fish or float or whatever you want to say.
Ragdoll.
I can do that. I can do that now while I'm exercising, while I'm walking, while I'm in a meeting, while I'm, it's just normal now. It's like second nature, but it took a lot of practice. It didn't happen overnight. And I know that folks want that magic cure, that magic pill, or there is none. There's not a magic pill. There's not a SSRI. There's not a benzo. There's not a herb. Nothing. Yeah. You have to do the work, because in the end, all you have is you.
Yeah.
You know, so,
Yeah. And we always say, like, you know, we're the only ones that can fix ourselves. I mean, you can get support and encouragement and all that stuff, but in the end, we have to do the work ourselves.
right.
I think in the interest of like encouraging somebody who is watching, who is maybe in a bad spot still, like those things you said. So right now you could be in a meeting, you could be at the gym, you could be driving, like panic can hit and you could just do the non-reactive ragdoll thing.
Right.
That at one point had to feel impossible. I'm guessing like that's not how could that be a thing? That can't be real. But yet here we're doing it now.
Right.
I'm guessing.
It takes it was not easy. It takes a lot of courage, you know, because your reaction is you want to get help from somebody, help, call 911 or, you know,
right. Save
whatever.
Me.
Yeah. Save me. And, you know, you can't. So it's nothing can save you from that except for you. So the quicker that you can teach your subconscious that this doesn't scare me, you know, which it does, you know, but then it's, you know, once you get used to it, you know, and that just takes courage.
Yeah.
So that's why I tell people in the group, you have to have patience and courage and determination. Those are really like the three biggest things.
It is. I think sometimes courage is the biggest sticking point. And I understand that. Like a lot of people feel like they're not, you know, I just don't have courage. Like, no, everybody does. You just have to find it, like, you know, and learn to display it. But you did a great job. You did like a textbook example of it, man. I'm really super proud of you. So
thanks. Thanks for the podcast and thanks for the book. Congratulations on that, by the way.
I know today's actually book release day, and I'm like, I guess I should do a podcast today. So I'm super happy that I get to talk to you today. We should have done it long ago, but thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So you guys are all so like crazy supportive, and I appreciate all you guys. So I guess we'll wrap it up because I try and keep it under 30 minutes. This way people don't get too bored. But dude, I appreciate you coming by, and we'll do one of these again. We'll have to do like dual fireside chats one day.
Dual fireside, that sounds good.
I think that's what the public needs to see. So Nick in the group has done a couple of really great videos that I love that he calls fireside chats with Nick, including the title screen. Like, I love it. It's so good. So I was sitting at my fire pit the other night, and I'm like, I should fire up. I'm like, no, I can't do a video by the fire. Like, that's copyright infringement practically.
Yeah.
Oh,
TM.
man. Yeah, right. TM. Anyway, dude. All right. Thanks. I appreciate you coming by. And if you guys are in the group, you want to ask Nick questions, I'm sure we'll answer them, whatever it is. We'll put the video up in the group. This will be on YouTube. And what else am I supposed to say before we sign out? I'm supposed to ask you if you're listening to the audio to rate and review on iTunes. It's book release day. So go to theanxioustruth.com/recovery guide and check out the book. Buy the book. It's a good book. It'll help you. Anyway. All right, guys. Thanks. I appreciate it. And we'll see you in the next one. Now I have that awkward moment.
Somebody told me that you do or die, but I believe all you can do is try. And as the city stands 10 stories high, I'm gonna live my life. It's all around you, you can breathe it in, and this is where your story begins. You got the feeling that you're gonna win. Yeah, you're on your way. It's in the afterglow. It's in the lyrics of the songs we know. It's in these feelings that you never show. Yeah, you're doing fine. It's all around you, you can breathe it in. And this is where your story begins. You got the feeling that you're gonna win. Yeah, you're doing fine. Now in the city and you're living fast. No looking back or dwelling on the past. You know you'll never get another chance.